Hello, everybody. It's Adam Dye, amateur radio call sign N4NT, and I'm back here with another Ham Radio Zone video for you. And this one, we're going to respond to viewer comments. Now, these comments, we do have a Facebook page, Ham Radio Zone, and I've gotten a lot of comments there. I've also shared my videos on various ham radio Facebook pages, and I've gotten a lot of comments there. Anyone who spends any time on the internet, especially social media, knows there's a lot of comments that are extremely gracious, and there are a lot of comments that are not so good, and there's some in between. And I also try to keep in mind that sometimes things get lost in a text message translation. Same thing with comments. Someone may not be complimenting, but they may not be cutting me down necessarily either. And so I've learned to not immediately respond to certain comments, but to kind of let it roll around in my head and then go back. But anyway, so what we're going to do, I'm going to put the comment. It's a copy and paste exact of the comment up on the screen. I debated on whether to actually put the person's that's making the comments information, like their @ name or whatever, and I've decided not to. If anyone wants to take credit for their comment in the comment section of this video, feel free, but I'm just going to just kind of leave that direct information out. But this is a highlight, copy, and paste what I put on the screen of the exact comment, typos and everything, misspellings, whatever. And I do that because some of them actually lead to obscuring the meaning a little bit and making it pretty funny. So, and I'm not doing this to belittle anyone or anything like that. If you have a misspelling that we turn into something humorous, I actually commented back on one that a gentleman did that will probably be featured here in a little bit, and it was just funny, his spelling of the version of the word that he used and the way it came out. And I probably could have said something even more clever back, and that's all it was. It was just, any response was just meant to be humorous. It wasn't meant to be argumentative or anything. I won't get online and argue with commenters. Sometimes if they say something that is like 100% I know to be false and I have proof of it, and in writing I'll rebut and say, hey, no, that's not true or whatever, just to try to help keep from misleading someone else. Anyway, so I'm just going to start with some of the most recent and go as far as I can get. I will tell you what video by name that it references. So this first one, I did a video, and there'll be multiple comments on this one, where the FCC imposed a major fine on a pirate radio station. And this gentleman comments and says, I sent that guy a notice of apparent liability too for $25,000. He never paid. Amen. Yeah, so that's kind of I take that as a joking comment or whatever, that basically my response to that, or more of an explanation of that comment, is that he's kind of right in his thinking that the FCC can fine people however much they want to, but if they don't have that money, then they're wasting more money sending them letters than they're actually going to get. This next one, same video, says you would think the FCC would concentrate more on scam calls and doing something about that instead of worrying about someone running whatever kind of pirate radio on an FM station that's not going to hurt anybody, most likely. I mean, there's way more fines to be loaded against others that are much bigger fish, unless they're part of those fish. Then he references a timestamp here, 5:33. Tell me if I'm wrong, but don't they also regulate phone communications? So again, all these phone carriers and those using the phone number carrier system to produce scam calls to millions and millions of Americans every day, why aren't they doing something to them? That's all I have to say, and that's my rant. Thank you for your comment. And a couple things to unpack here about that in response is, I have noticed in my research, and I don't report on this as much because I try to stick to the radio spectrum, but I have noticed there has been some FCC action when it comes to the robocalls and all that kind of stuff. Now, you specifically mentioned scam calls. So being in law enforcement and criminal justice, there's robocalls are probably in a lot of ways a scam, but there's also legit robocalls where they're trying to sell you something that they may actually provide. So just to differentiate there, a scam call would be if someone called you up, for instance, and one of the most prevalent ones that I see is the scam call where someone calls you up and says, "Hey, if you send me X amount of dollars, or you go to this store and buy these gift cards and give me the numbers off of those, and I need like $500 or $1,000 worth of gift cards, and you give me the numbers off of those, and then I will send you in return $5,000, something like that." Those kind of scam calls, there could be some FCC action against whoever's doing those, but normally that type of activity would fall under like local law enforcement. And the way that works is wherever, no matter where that person's calling from, wherever that victim is of that scam, that is the jurisdiction. That is where the jurisdiction lies as far as prosecuting. Now, yeah, you're climbing a very uphill battle sometimes in trying to find these people, because one of the things that I have discovered is that a lot of these people are at places like Pakistan or somewhere like that. In a case like that, if you could track down that call, if you could trace it, a lot of times they're spoofing their number through the internet and using virtual IPs and all this kind of stuff to obscure your ability to find them. But let's say you could track these people down. You knew it was this guy in this country or whatever. Then that would probably graduate up to like federal law enforcement handling that situation, since it goes out of the country. Normally speaking, though, these scam calls, there's not really anything the FCC is going to be able to do about it, especially with their only ability of imposing civil action, and the fact that it's generating out of a foreign country. It goes beyond their scope of what to do. Again, and this is I'm giving you like real experience facts about this. This isn't a rebut to your comment or anything like that. It's just trying to kind of help clarify it for you, which is why I think a lot of times people will comment, and another reason that I'm answering these. So let's see, and looking at and then doing something about a pirate radio station that's not going to hurt anybody, most likely. It depends. I mean, that's definitely subjective in a lot of ways. It depends on what that pirate radio station's doing. Is it interfering or anywhere close to an actual licensed radio station? Is it playing material that artists should be entitled to royalties on, things like that? So they're may not be hurting a thing, but my personal belief about that is that the rules are the rules, and the law is the law. So that person shouldn't be doing that anyway, and the FCC at the very least should take some kind of cease and desist or warning action. But in this particular case, they chose to fine. Now, it says here, tell me if I'm wrong, but don't they also regulate phone communications? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And hopefully what I explained to you just a moment ago kind of will differentiate where they land as far as what's the nature of the scam call. Yeah, they have jurisdiction, or they have authority to try to stop the scam calls and the robocalls, but the actual crime that results from the scam call typically falls in local jurisdiction where the victim is at, and that kind of thing. But yeah, they do. They've actually they have taken action against some groups for robocalling and so forth. I don't report on those because this is ham radio, GMRS type stuff mostly. Let's see, and I'm just reading this again. Yeah, so I think that sort of answers the last part about it. Why aren't they doing something to them? A lot of that, and I can tell you from personal experience working in local law enforcement and dealing with these robocalls and scam calls that people call us about as well, is that they do everything they can, but your hands are really tied because these people, using virtual IP addresses and originating from foreign countries and all that. Really, the biggest thing that we try to concentrate on doing about this particular situation, these scam calls and whatever, is we always tell people, any chance we get in a public forum, and I'm doing it right now, is don't give these people any of your personal information. If someone calls you and tells you that send them money for money, then it's a scam. If they call and tell you that they've got your relative in jail and you've got to pay money or anything, they're not going to reach out to you like that if any of that stuff was legit. So just don't give out any kind of personal information. And also remember this: I grew up Generation X when you only had phones in the house and all that. And I remember that generation, the influence of that generation was when that phone rang, you would knock over family and tables and everything else to not miss that phone call. And I think a lot of folks from those generations back or whatever, and maybe they've even imparted that to some folks in the newer generation in their family, they feel an extreme obligation to answer that phone call. And at the end of the day, if you don't recognize that number, you're not sure, you don't have any obligation to answer that phone call. And if somebody calls and they start spouting off all this, like right now, I'm getting a tremendous amount of phone calls all because I bought something recently or something. And now all of a sudden I get hundreds of phone calls a week saying, my loan application process, I haven't applied for any loans or anything. So I hang up. That's one of the tricks that I've started doing too. And I really wish we could do more about it, and we didn't have to. But one of the things I do to keep them from filling up my voicemails, when I see a spam call on my phone, I answer it and then hang up. And that way they don't get my voicemail. Excellent question. Most of the things you said in this question, or all the things you said in this question, I should say, I could probably dedicate an entire video to kind of going over some of this. And I know I've took up a good portion of this one, but a great question. Thank you. I appreciate all of our commenters and everything, even the ones that thrash at me a little bit, because interaction or whatever is what it is. If you're commenting on my stuff, then that, I'm sure that helps the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, throw it at me no matter what it is. I had one commenter say extremely informative and thanks. I'm going to go ahead and just anyone that gives me positive comments like that, and I get a bunch of them, I thank you. I greatly appreciate it. I'm not going to read every one of those because they all have kind of the same meaning, and I want to get to some of the ones that are funny and that I like. This last one, I can give some explanation and go into a few things with it. This next commenter, this is a video about hilarious ham radio call signs that you won't believe are real, was the name of it. And if I'm technologically advanced enough, I'll try to link each video as we go, but I'm learning as I go here. He said there's a guy in Texas whose call sign is W5ASS, Alpha Sierra Sierra. Of course, I'll have the comment up on the screen. He POTA hunts, and I have his QSL card. Yeah, some of those are really interesting. I covered as many of those as I could, and there were still many more out there. I'll probably at some point do a volume 2 or something like that, or a second edition on that, as I find more and more of these call signs. And I had people send me suggestions in the comments. Here's another comment about the FCC imposed major fine video, which the others were about previously. And this person, I say gentleman generically, and it probably is, because according to YouTube analytics, I have one female listener, and all the rest of you are males. And that one female, I know who it is my wife. So she gets on there to help me get some interaction and views and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so this radio station actually had a website and a phone number and everything. There's an email too, but it's a Gmail, and that's interesting. Yeah, that's kind of the Gmail thing. A lot of people have them. I've seen a lot of businesses with them. And one of the things, I was delving into voiceover a little bit and reading books and doing a lot of research, and part of that was that you wanted to make yourself look like a legitimate business, that you wanted, because that's what you were. If you started bringing in clients and making money, that's what you were. And one of the things they recommended is drop the Gmail address. Like, you can use it or do whatever with it, but get yourself, pay the money, get yourself a website. So and I did that, and I'm still open to doing voiceover, but it just and it probably had a lot to do with just the amount of time that I had to put into it and try to market myself. So I may pick it back up later, but I did do a website, and I have an email address that's, my name is in it and everything. So yeah, that I say that to indicate this, that someone's running something as big as a radio station, because especially if you're playing music, there's a lot of money to be invested, and there's a lot of money to be made, and that is a huge business. I have a friend that's in broadcast radio, like for a full-time job. I do a nonprofit station broadcast show, hour a week kind of thing, but this guy's into the full on, and he's talked about the revenue and how much it costs for the time and all that. So obviously, if you've got all that going on and you're a legit radio station, you're not going to be whatever point something FM at gmail.com. You're going to be something at, or my radio station at myradiostation.com, something to that effect. This next commenter, same video, says FCC has no police or enforcement powers. And then another gentleman replied to him and said their administrative judges aren't real judges. Their fines are challenged at the time and never paid. Administrative judges can't make you pay. Breaking an agency rule isn't akin to breaking a law. Okay, so the first one, yes, you are correct. They have no police or enforcement powers. Another video that I just did, they do have to, if there is any kind of criminal law broken, they have to refer you to the Department of Justice, and then they can investigate and determine probable cause and actually make charges and all that kind of stuff. The FCC itself, and they will tell you right in their book, in their publications, that they don't. I don't know, when he made this comment, I don't know if I gave the insinuation in that video. I tried not to. I try to probably clarify it a little overly, like I speak a little too much on it, but I did try to clarify that this is all civil action. The next one, the gentleman mentions the administrative judges aren't real judges. That's subjective as far as they probably have the title of judge and they're a judge within that organization. But yeah, I get what you're saying as far as like state appointed elected judges, that kind of thing. They do not fall into that category. They might be better served to refer to them as an arbitrator or something like that. But the FCC itself does have authority under the Communications Act to impose these fines, but like the gentleman alludes to, they can't absolutely make you pay the fines. Now they can refer it out, and there can be civil judgments for the fines, or they could be depending on what you do. There could be criminal implications depending on what you did as far as breaking the rules, as it says right here. So yeah, directly speaking, the FCC rules are just that, because FCC licenses are privileges and not rights. So these are rules and not laws. But what can end up happening, the FCC exists for a reason, and the rules exist for a reason. And a lot of that reason, sometimes those reasons are to keep us, for instance, ham radio, GMRS folks or whatever, FRS and all that, from dipping into critical infrastructure or something like that. So you could end up branching out into something that becomes criminal. And I think one of the videos I did previously kind of spoke about that, as there's different ways that things can become criminal. But once the FCC runs into that roadblock, then they have to refer those things to the Department of Justice. All right, so this next comment comes from a video that I did about politics on the air, talking about politics on the air. And one of the reasons I did that video was because some folks even in my local area had the misconception that that it was against the rules and you weren't allowed to talk about politics on the air. This commenter says some things like politics and religion should only be discussed with family and good friends in private, because both can be so inflammatory. Yeah, that's true. There's an old saying about politics and religion discussions, and that's possible. That's definitely. I think we all know when you get into those discussions. If you sit down at the Thanksgiving dinner and you've got a family member or members on one side of the aisle and the left or the right or whatever, and you start discussing things or whatever, yeah, it can get pretty heated. Same thing for ham radio. One of the things that I remember saying in that video is that there is no rule or law or anything that completely abolishes your ability to speak about politics and religion on the radio, on ham radio. You can put yourself together a net, and as long as that frequency is open, you can have Bible study if you want to on the radio. You can have a group that affiliates with either of the political parties. If you're like-minded individuals, no, you can't use the amateur radio for business itself. But if you and a group of friends are on one side of the political aisle and you meet on and it happens, there's several out there. You meet on a certain frequency, and that's what you talk about. That's your right. I agree with what the commenter is saying, but I also agree that, or also will say that I have very much stopped on some of these QSOs and joined in, because whether it's politics, religion, or whatever, especially on the, I hate the word religion in particular, but when it comes to Christianity, but I'm not going to go into a theological thing here. But if I found people who believed what I believed in that respect and were like-minded, and we wanted to get on the air and have a study, or even, in that one, I don't have as much problem even talking to people that have different views and doing that civilly. That's the main thing. Just keep it civil and represent the hobby well. You have every right to do that, and I have joined in on said conversations before, and there's some that operate on a regular schedule, and if it's not your thing, then simply spin the dial and go to the next thing. Go find somewhere to affiliate or QSO with that makes you happy, but don't take their happiness away from them if they're enjoying, because sometimes, especially when your opinions may fall in the minority thinking or whatever, it seems like that everybody else thinks one way and you think the other, and then you find like-minded people, whether it's through ham radio, whether it's through public conversation or whatever, then Facebook or whatever, then that's kind of a heartwarming thing to do. So I personally would not limit folks from being able to do that on ham radio. Next comment comes from we're back to the major fine video, the FCC imposed major fine. And this commenter says, I always wonder why you can't get a day in court for FCC accusations. If you get a traffic ticket for $100, you can still get a court date. Well, I'm not sure where that comes from exactly, because if the FCC sends you a notice of apparent liability, then you have like 10 days, I think it is. You can actually answer this accusation. You can present reading the FCC manual about the procedures with that, they treat it just like a court case in a lot of ways, that you can present your side of the story and discovery and evidence and the whole thing. It's just a matter of you've got to initiate that, because it's being a civil issue, they can impose a fine in your absence. Now, for instance, whether they impose the fine in your absence or they do it in spite of your defense, you can appeal that above the SCC, and eventually you will get a day in court. Referring back to one of the previous comments that the Supreme Court is actually deciding the FCC's full authority as far as their hearings go, and not allowing or not having any kind of potential for a jury or whatever. That might be one of the reasons why the things may stay the way that they are, is because if the FCC bangs the gavel and says you owe $60,000, that's not the end of it, unless you choose to pay it and go on or whatever, which I don't know very many people that can or will. There's still an appeals process that goes into, referring back to one of the other commenters, about that will go to a real judge at some point. So that might be, and I'm just trying to give an unbiased opinion as far as the litigation against the FCC right now. That might be a reason why things kind of stay the way they are. I don't know. They may actually rule against them. But yeah, it's not exactly the same thing as getting a traffic ticket, because a traffic ticket is based on probable cause, which is the officer radaring or seeing you run a stop sign, whatever the case is. It goes into an actual court, as opposed to a civil board or an administrative judge type thing. So there's the difference on that. Thank you for your comment, though. That's good that I want to hear these kind of things, so that way I do have the opportunity to try to expound on it further. Okay, the same video, FCC imposed major fine, and here's why. That's the title of the video if you want to look it up. This one says, somehow the FCC always manages to, and he's put a more polite spelling of the F word here in order to make the comment pass, and that's fine. So they always manage to F around for years and then settle for lunch money. Considering that the entire FM broadcast spectrum, all channels, is commercially licensed and field solid, yeah, maybe they'll get pushed a bit. The channel license has stepped on. I'm assuming it means like has been stepped on. I think what he's getting at is just the amount of money that they're imposing on fine, and probably even alluding to their enforcement action seems to run a little bit faster, maybe, or actually be more enforcement action in these areas as opposed to some others. And I won't argue with that. They are a federal government agency, and they probably do sort of focus where the money's at. And I don't have a lot of cases that I could sit here and just allude to, but that considering what's involved with that, yeah, that's probably a valid point. All right, same video. FCC imposed major fine, and here's why. And this person here says the FCC is an arm of the deep state. Bureaucracy's main purpose is to protect the profits of large corporations. In no world should the government be fining amateur radio stations $60,000, $100 fine tops, and slap on the wrist. That is crazy. Okay, so I'm not going to argue all bureaucracies as it should be pronounced. Typically are not for people. I'll give you that. I will say, as far as large corporations go, if it weren't for large corporations and billionaires, we wouldn't have millionaires, and we wouldn't have the folks that trickle down. But that might be considered a little bit of a political statement, but is what it is. And but as far as the in no world should the government be fining amateur radio stations $60,000. This was not an amateur radio station. Now, I haven't looked back to see what level of fines amateur radio stations have been fined, but this was a broadcast. This was someone doing a broadcast radio station. I don't even know that the person was a licensed ham. It was about broadcast radio. So I don't know if the person just didn't watch the enough of the video or the full video, or they're just commenting off the title or something like that. But no, this was not a fine for any kind of amateur radio activity or anything like that. I have heard of, off the top of my head, in my years in ham radio, of fines up to around $20,000, depending on the infraction. But I don't know of any fine that big for amateur radio. This was a fine because of a broadcast radio station. And based on what I was reading about it, it sounds like they were a music type station. So there's other potential violations there. And some of that's pretty legit. I mean, you're protecting victims in that case when it comes to the artist not getting entitled royalties. I mean, I'll refer you back to the early 2000s and the whole Napster thing. Just it's very similar to that. Next comment, and this is from the same video. It says, and this one's a few sentences here. It says, "It takes one brilliant individual to transmit an unauthorized carrier somewhere he's not supposed to be. For the feds, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. What's the attraction to bootlegging on the FM broadcast band anyway? Considering the bootlegger was trying to appeal to certain minority and criminal element, did they run crack cocaine spots on the station and sell to gain profit? Typical Miami, what an awful place to live." Okay, well, thank you for your comment. Some of the things I'll just kind of leave it as your comment, but yeah, as far as transmitting an unauthorized carrier on an FM station, it's very easy. I mean, you're putting it out there in the public for some reason, and he's probably advertised the thing and having the Gmail and all that. I mean, he's trying to make it seem like a legit radio station. So yeah, I don't know why anybody would do that. It would be like me or someone else getting on their YouTube channel, and I've seen this, and saying, "Hey, here's my new Cobra 142 CB radio, and I just had it modified, and I can go above channel 40 and below channel 1, and I got this in it and that." All these things that you're not supposed to have. I don't know if the FCC would do anything about it or not, but the fact that you put it out so publicly that you're doing this illegal operation, it almost should just be a given that you're caught and your video or whatever, all that stuff should be evidence. So I kind of liken it to that. Yeah, shooting fish in a barrel, absolutely. It's kind of like in my line of work when the drug dealers and the bad guys get on Facebook and post their locations and pretty much detail a lot of what they're doing. It's like, really? Next comment, same video. This one drew a lot of comments, and I think it's quite a few views for me as well. And it says, man, there's hecklers on the Oklahoma Superlink system that's been ongoing for a year now, and I hope they find them just as much. It's literally nonstop playing music and sound clips and jamming and other childish nonsense. There was a tornado on the ground in Tulsa a few days ago, and people were trying to figure out where it was, and of course they were on there constantly keying up off and on and playing sound clips. Pretty good comment here. Yeah, I mean, that's terrible that people get on there and do that and jam up when you're trying to work as far as public safety or something like that goes. But this brings up a good point, and I've mentioned this in previous videos too, of where you could potentially go when it comes to the illegality of what you're doing. And I've not heard of this or anything as far as it happening this way, but I could see the FCC or someone else even making a connection that if you're keying up on your amateur radio and broadcasting music, technically you're violating with all the what is it, ASCAP and all those organizations. You're violating copyright laws by broadcasting that music and not paying royalties. Now, the only thing I've ever heard of people getting hit with when it comes to doing these type of activities, it has to do with the interference that they cause and the jamming and all that. But hey, that might be a bug in somebody's ear that maybe it's the groups that regulate this copywriting and everything, that if you really want to jam up some of these people that are doing this stupid stuff, that may be a way to get them in another area, and that would increase the fines. I don't know that the FCC just for amateur radio jamming can fine you quite as much as having an illegal broadcast station, but this might be a way to kind of stack it up on there. This next commenter, same video. I've got several. I may have to break this up into a couple videos and everything. And looking at it now, I maybe could have done an entire one on this one video's comments, but they say, there are a lot of misinformed people on here. There are a variety of pirate radio operations, but I'll concentrate on one, playing music. Some years ago, the organization responsible for seeing that musicians receive their royalties, ASCAP BMI, sued the federal government and won. The Pirate Act was born from the lawsuit. If you are playing copyrighted material, you will have your busted by the FCC. I'll let you read that. Yeah, kind of validates my last point. They could very well step in if that's what you're doing. And I know there's a few frequencies on the HF bands that come to mind where folks do this kind of thing. And people are getting frustrated constantly about the FCC's lack of enforcement or action when it comes to these kind of things. This might be a good way to kind of wake that up and get them more involved to try to actually get some kind of enforcement. I mean, I totally feel like that in some way, shape, or form, if it's a rule or it's a law, I kind of try to follow those rules and those laws, and it frustrates me when other people don't and they get away with it, no matter how minor it is. So yeah, I feel people's pain when they mention, hey, I've reported this and the FCC didn't do anything about it, but boy, they get involved when the big money's involved and all that. And that sucks that sometimes things are like that. But if this might be a way to get the big money involved and get that, if that's the only thing that we can do right at the moment. This next one, this gentleman here comments frequently, especially when I post a video about the FCC, and I certainly appreciate any and all comments, and any kind of engagement is engagement, and I definitely have I've liked his comments, regardless of whether I agree with them totally, just because I like the fact that they're commenting. And he writes, and I'm going to read this one comment, this one particular, and if he has any more down through here, I'll skip over them because they essentially all say the same thing. FCC is a joke. They don't do anything unless it makes them look good. Been almost 6 years now, and I've been waiting for a couple individuals that he names here at FCC to enforce their rules on interfering with amateur radio operator. I'm also waiting for them to follow up on over 150 complaints of interference from a CBer on 10 meters. That same CBer using a SK call sign and much more. In America, we are innocent until proven guilty. The FCC imposing a fine without your right to a trial violates your constitutional rights. It's unfortunate that hams don't have the same set of. He's got 2 basketballs here that I have to stand up to them. This person tried to scare me with the Department of Homeland Security, and I laughed at them, and they don't like me because I know the laws and they can't touch me. Several different things to unpack here. FCC referring to them as a joke, that's subjective opinion, and I'm not going to disagree or agree totally with it. I personally like to look at the FCC. There's a lot of things that I feel like they fall short of doing, and a lot of criticism that I can give them, and certainly will. But I don't suffer from FCC, and I'm not saying this person does. I'm talking about me personally. I don't suffer from any kind of derangement syndrome when it comes to them. If they do good, I will acknowledge that as well. Just because they may have done a lot of things that I didn't like, I'm not going to look over the things they do that I do like, which is fairly commonplace in the world today. It seems like if you dislike someone or something for one reason, then nothing they can do will ever be good enough, and you're always going to speak against it or protest it or whatever. And he said it'd been almost 6 years, and he's waiting for them to enforce the rules on interference. So I don't know the specifics of that. I'd like to hear what kind of interference. Is it an ongoing thing, or did it happen one time and move on? So one thing about that, if you report that type of stuff, is that they may issue a warning letter and the person may stop and it'll be done. But if it's an ongoing thing, yeah, I feel your pain on that. And then over 150 complaints of interference from a CBer. So yeah, definitely that's if there's interference there, they shouldn't be doing that. And if you've had a legitimate complaint and you've sent it to them that many times, and there's over 150 issues. Now, if it's 150 complaints over the same one thing that happened one time and then stopped, I don't know where you'll get with that. And then here's the confusing one. It says CBer using I'm assuming a silent key call sign and much more. Now, if they're using it on CB, you don't have to have one to begin with. If they are now on amateur radio, maybe they're floating over into the 10 meter band, then that would definitely be an issue. And the only way amateur radio really truly gets policed is by other amateur radio operators. As far as the innocent until proven guilty, yeah, of course. However, the FCC it's a civil, as I've explained in other videos, and right now there is some question on that in the Supreme Court. So some things may change, and you may see those things change positively to what you're commenting on if they start requiring a jury as opposed to just an administrative judge. But as it stands right now, this is simply a civil issue. They can impose the fine, and you have the right to appeal that to a higher court. And based on some of the other comments, and I'm not trying to be argumentative as much as educational and just kind of beware type thing, the not being touched type thing is, we're talking about the shooting fish in a barrel in the previous comment. Sometimes you can make it easier on them to, if you do things against regulations, whether it's in protest or whatever, when you start making that very public that you're doing those kind of things. I realize you're frustrated with their lack of enforcement, as many of us are. I totally agree with you on that. And there's a lot of rules and regulations. I know a lot of people over the years that free band on Citizen Band radio, and probably still to this day do. I tune around on their frequencies with my ham radio, and I hear them. And the FCC probably just doesn't care. I know people that program FRS frequencies into HTs and whatever else and use them, and they'll probably never anything be said. But I think you could run into a slippery slope when you sort of broadcast and flaunt that kind of stuff to the point of, oh, they'll never do anything. You never know. I may be wrong, but it might get the kind of attention that you don't want. So anyway, I do appreciate you commenting. You've commented on a lot of different videos, and I know by reading the comments you'll know who you are if you're watching this video. Keep them coming, because there's things in all these comments that sometimes we can use to expound on and help educate others. So I don't. The only comments that I've ever deleted or reported was profanity laced comments. They were totally against me, but I don't delete just for that reason. But I do try to keep the profanity out of my videos and stuff, because I want children to be involved, my children to be involved in amateur radio, and I want them to be able to get on this channel and be able to read comments and look at videos and not have to deal with all that. And I know somebody will probably say, well, they talk a whole lot worse than we do. This next comment, I'm not going to put the whole thing on here. It's not so. I'm still kind of mulling over whether to actually just get rid of this one altogether. But basically, it insinuates total selective enforcement, and then cites some different things that the FCC has insinuating that some people doing the same thing, that they kind of turn a blind eye because of political affiliations or things like that. So that's about all I'll say about that. I'm not going to get into that, but you're more than welcome. I'll leave the comment up for now at least, and you're more than welcome to get on that video and scroll down. You'll probably find exactly what I'm talking about. But I don't know. I don't know if the FCC, the FCC as a whole, or individual field agents or anything. There's good and bad in everything, and yeah, there may be some things that get ignored and some things that get enforced. I'm not going to argue that point, but yeah, some of this sort of just throws down some insinuations or whatever that seem like a little bit of an extremist point. I'll just say that. Let's see. Same video. This one it drew some comments. It seems like it was a pretty popular video. Oh, this one, okay. And I may not read the whole thing, but I'll put it on the screen for you. In a situation like that, talking about the FCC imposed fine for a pirate radio station. In a situation like that, best thing to do is take everything out of your name, so legally you don't have anything. Never sign for anything that you don't know what it is. Never accept anything you don't know what to do. Never open your door. Okay, so I'll just let you read the rest of this. I'll spot down through here on some things. He talks about operating a radio station that causes interference with emergency services, and they're nowhere near that frequency. Anyway, just let me comment on the first part of that. As far as changing everything into your name, one, probably the main thing here is that don't break the law, don't break the rules. You know, follow the, even in spite of what other people may be doing around you. If it's running rampant, and it will change from generation to generation, or presidential term, or whatever, or local politicians, or those things will change from time to time. But your ethics and your morals are about you. They're a reflection of you. I have worked for people before that in years past that I question their ethics and whatnot, but I did my job to the best of my ability. And because I'm the one that has to answer for me, I showed up on time and I did the things I was supposed to do and all that. And if it was that bad, I found another and went on. So yeah, that is all a reflection of you personally. If you jump on the bandwagon of just willy-nilly breaking laws and breaking rules and things like that, just because somebody's turning a blind eye to it, that's the only thing I can say about that is you have to answer for you. As far as putting everything in someone else's name, okay, if you got someone you trust that well, that's great. If it's your spouse, depending on where you live, it may not matter. You get a civil injunction against you and you've put everything in your spouse's name and you live in a marital property state, then you basically took money out of one pocket and stuck it in the other. We'll tell a little story here real quick about an old guy from back where I'm from originally, my hometown. And this gentleman was a very wealthy individual, and he got into some legal trouble of some sort, maybe even a divorce. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but it was something to where he was fearing losing some property and some money. So he had this gentleman that worked for him on his farm. He was kind of his farmhand guy, his right-hand man, took care of his farm, his land, all that kind of stuff. So this guy that did all this wasn't very educated or anything like that, very loyal worker. Well, he turns around and he puts all of his bank accounts and all this stuff in this guy's name until all this blows over. Well, this guy would show up. My dad owned a store back then. He would show up and buy stuff at the store, and he would write checks. Back in the 80s, write checks. Never once recorded anything in a check register. Of course, we didn't have smartphones and all that and online banking back then. Never once wrote a single purchase down. And we all knew he didn't make that much money to the point where he could just write a check and know that it was covered. But none of them bounced. Well, it turned out that's what he was doing. He went and bought himself a brand new truck, he spent a whole lot of that money. Now, when it came time for him to put everything back in the original person's name, he did that, and the original person saw what happened, and he fired him. So if you do go that route, if you don't listen to the first thing I said, and you go the route of, okay, I'm going to break the law, and then if I get caught, nothing's going to be in my name. So here you go. There's a couple of things to consider. But thank you for your comment, though. It was very lengthy, and it brought, and that's fine, and it brought some things to light there that we could potentially educate others. And there's some replies to that comment down through here, and they also go into what I talked about earlier with the copyrighted material and harmful interference with public safety and everything. I'm going to skip down to, this was a good comment, and I've actually mentioned this in other videos. And it's the same video. Person says, can't get money out of a man that has no money. Newsflash, he doesn't care. Valid point. Very valid point. Sue me for $1 million. It's okay. I'm not going to sweat it because you'll never get $1 million. I'll give you that. This next video comment, this is a video that I did a while back, and it was in reference to, it's called Hands-Free Device Laws and Ham Radio, What Operators Need to Know While Driving. So that's what we covered, some of the provisions and so forth in hands-free device laws and how that they exempted amateur radios. Also covered a similar video. It was about having a scanner in your vehicle. So this person comments, says, I can confirm the People's Republic of Minnesota also has exemptions in the state law for amateur radio, CB, and et cetera. So that's what they're saying, is that they were confirming that Minnesota had an exemption for amateur radio and two-way radio. They usually specifically say two-way radio, and I keep referring back to amateur radio, but yeah, it's two-way radio. So this one is a comment on a video that I have entitled, Oops, Amateur Radio Interference Gets FCC Notice. This commenter says, for people who think FCC rules are not laws, keep in mind that the commission was created through the Communications Act of 1934, which is in and of itself a law governing use of wireless spectrum. The stated purpose of the FCC is to enforce the law through a rulemaking process. The rules instituted by the FCC enforce the laws passed by the Congress and signed by the chief executive, whoever happens to hold such office at that time, at any given time. The FCC is a law enforcement agency just like your local sheriff's department, but dealing specifically with radio communication and lawful use of the spectrum. The rules, by extension, are indeed law. So I like this comment because, yeah, it does make that connection. The FCC regulations are rules, and the way they kind of daisy chain or connect to being laws is through the Communications Act of 1934. Now, one thing I did cover in a previous video, I did go into what the FCC themselves says that they can and cannot do, and they do explicitly say they cannot. They are not a law enforcement agency. The FCC themselves, in their own publications, state that they are not law enforcement. They enforce these rules and regulations. They do the investigations, but if it comes down to a law enforcement or a criminal type situation, they do have to refer you to the Department of Justice. But yeah, that is the very good explanation of things that I have been trying to convey or say about the FCC when it comes to their authority, which makes the current litigation that they're up against in April of 2026 very interesting as to what it's going to look like when the Supreme Court renders a final decision. And let's see, another comment on the amateur radio interference gets an FCC notice. And this person says, break the law and people will turn you in. Operate out of band and run illegal power on the chicken band. Operate outside your license privileges and you'll be reported. And I'm not the only one. So I guess this person is just stating like, hey, I'm gonna tell on you if you mess up. I've had some other comments. In fact, one that I had to delete because of its profanity laced or whatever that was pointed at me. I did a video about reporting individuals who'd committed certain crimes and still being licensed amateur, in particular sex offenders. And there was someone actually come to their defense and was like, oh, you're on here doing videos and you're telling people how to report people and all that. Well, yeah, I don't want sex offenders on amateur radio. Like I try to avoid any kind of controversial or whatever opinions on my channel for the most part, but I'll tell you, I have nothing to hide behind with that particular opinion. I don't think they should be on there. If they're forbidden from being in parks and places with children get on amateur radio, and it's just a means that a lot of them are not supposed to be on social media or anything like that because it's a means for them to connect with children. And I don't think amateur radio should be any different, but I do know of cases where they are allowed to be on amateur radio that the license was reported and not revoked, and that's kind of aggravating. But y'all like my country accent, I know. But I'm behind this person right here. The only way that the amateur radio bands get policed is by us. That's not to say the FCC will do anything about it, but like the gentleman a few comments ago, yeah, he may be a little more extreme in his thinking on it or whatever, when he's entitled to his opinion. But in agreement with him, in agreement with this person right here, and it's taught. I'm getting on a little bit of a soapbox here. If you get an amateur radio license and you do more than just read and memorize questions, if you read I highly suggest get the Gordon West book and read the paragraphs under the questions and learn about the hobby. And it very much has been a tradition, has been part of this hobby for many years that we self-police because no one else is going to do it. The local law enforcement has no authority, and the FCC is got whatever going on. Maybe they're too big and got bigger fish to fry or whatever, and the only way they're going to notice us over here is for us to speak up. So yeah, that's going back to the previous gentleman. I may not state things exactly the way he would, and agreeing with this person right here, this is the only way that we get any kind of enforcement. And those rules are there for a reason. Those laws are there for a reason. They're there to protect the people who are trying to use the hobby right and be good ambassadors of the hobby. So yeah, I have. There are some people that have maybe made some negative comments during to this person about it, and then there's some that are supportive or whatever. And I'm not going to delete any of them, but yeah, I fall in the support. Yeah, we do. We are the only ones. It's going to take us or nothing. Okay. Deep breath, back off the soapbox. I'm sure that'll make a good shorts video. All right, so this one is the same video. Oops, amateur operator interference gets FCC notice. And this gentleman states, and he's making his own independent comment. Now, it's not a reply, but it seems like it's maybe a reply, and maybe he's replying to me or just replying to the general meaning of the video. And he says, I'm licensed, but I'm on the FCC side here. I think the FCC has been very pragmatic and reasonable and restrained here. He transmitted out of band, so it's fair game to stomped on. I'm reading it exactly as it is. Consider this very slightly different here. And it had been air banned, not police banned. Lives would have been at risk. His incompetence doesn't distinguish by frequency. A slap on the wrist seems to have been a fair admonishment to make him appreciate his failure and ensure he doesn't do it again. And in publicizing this, it helps make others think and avoid doing similar themselves. Thank you very much for that comment. This, just to give some context here, this particular video had to do with a operator that had a radio where he was able to kind of do a crossband thing, and it caused some interference with a local public safety network, radio network. One of the things, and I try to give folks the benefit of the doubt, was I said maybe this person was just doing that for his own ability to be able to remotely listen to this type stuff, and then it caused some unintentional interference. And this person, of course, saying I totally agree. Yeah, that you got to be careful what you do because, like for instance, if I were to go into my backyard and take my rifle or my pistol and I were to do some target shooting, and I was shooting at a soft target or something like that, and then somehow that bullet, I didn't make sure that target was backed up properly and all that, and even though I pulled that gun out and I fired that shot with the intention of shooting a piece of paper or something like that, and then that bullet somehow ends up in my neighbor's house and kills someone, I'm responsible. When that bullet leaves the end of that gun, I'm responsible for it. And so when you get to tinkering around and modifying your radios and doing things, and that's part of the case here, and it causes some kind of unintended interference, no one did that but you. I had a gentleman one time, and teenagers especially, I've taught driving school, and teenagers especially will argue with me that if the road was slick and they wrecked or something like that, or they rear end somebody because the road was icy and they slid into them or whatever, and they're like, it's not my fault. The road was like, well, nobody else was driving that car. As a operator of a vehicle, you're responsible to drive that vehicle in a manner that's safe. Put it in very simple terms. It's your responsibility to make sure that car doesn't crash. Now, does that involve you staying off the road for a little while because there's icy, or does that involve you slowing way down below the speed limit and driving at a safe speed? Whatever that case may be. Same thing here. No one else initiated the thing that happened but that person. And yes, I agree with the gist of this comment, or what you're trying to say right here. It says his incompetence doesn't distinguish by frequency. So yeah, and I also like though that this person in their comment was showing a little bit of discretion when looking at intent. That okay, yeah, there may not have been an intent here, but there was still some negligence. So yeah, you can weigh that in, juries or administrative judges or whatever. You can weigh that in against the intent and versus the outcome, and you might be allowed to impose a fine that's way up here, but you got intent down here, and maybe you bring those together and kind of meet in the middle. And then a reply to this comment. I take this as a joking comment maybe, but he says, I'll show it on here for everybody's entertainment. The enforcement needs to be much more strict. I think a minimum 20 years imprisonment with no chance of parole for the slightest infraction. It should be classified as an act of terror. So yeah, I'm sure that was a joke. Someone asked on another one video I did. This was understanding warning letters and apparent liabilities. I got on here and explained the difference in those. And a gentleman asked that please keep us updated on any actual actions that go all the way through convictions and etc. New general here. And I will. That's one of the things. I do get on the FCC website on a regular basis and look at their published enforcement actions. I do try to keep it radio related as far as like broadcasting or anything like that. I don't mess with the phone stuff and the robocalls and all that, but there's plenty of stuff out there that they're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude this video. I've got a bunch more comments on a bunch more videos, but I think what I'll do is go ahead and conclude this video, right here, and I'll sort of mark my place of where I'm at. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share, and that helps us out tremendously. Until next time, this is Adam Dye, amateur radio call sign N4NT, saying 7-3.